everyone. So my name is Darryn Scott. I'm on hosting duties. I've got the great pleasure of playing host tonight. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to the launch of Parenting in My Pocket, Parenting Volume 2 with Alan O'Donoghue. And so firstly, we're going to have a chat with Alan about the new book, how it came about, his influences behind it, and what he hopes readers are going to get from the book. And then Alan will do, be prepared he'll do a giveaway of a signed copy of his book. And then we're going to jump into a Q&A with Alan, where you guys get to ask those burning parenting questions. I'm sure there's a lot of them there. Yeah, I hope that sounds good to you guys. So Alan, if you're prepared, sir, I'm going to have a few questions which I'd love to know. So we can get straight into that. If you're good with that.
I'm very good with that. Yeah, ask away.
Brilliant. So firstly, man, absolute big congratulations on the book. I'm sure at this stage you're delighted to have the thing out.
I am, yeah. It's funny, this has been ready, in inverted commas, probably since the start of the summer, but not ready since the start of the summer.
Okay.
So poor Maria, who was my editor, who is here. Maria, thanks for coming and not just turning away from me forevermore. Maria had to put up with lots of emails and messages from me, and I'd say if we went through the thread of emails between me and Maria, most of them will start with, "Hi Maria, apologies for the delay in getting back to you." I would say every single one is one of them. But look, that's life. And I'm delighted that it's actually here. And I know we were messaging this morning and you were kind of saying, geez, the weather down here in Greystones is pretty bad. Should we have a backup plan of maybe postponing? And I was like, no, no. Because as I was explaining to Darryn, to you before we come on, I do have book 3 almost ready to go, and another book as well that I'm writing with somebody else. And they're writing it already, so I'm already months behind. So
amazing.
Yeah, not that I'm trying to kick this baby out of the front door before they turn 18, but you know, I'm happy that it's launch day and that the world can go and buy it and get it to become a New York Times bestseller by Christmas. Christmas Day New York Times bestseller would be nice. I'll accept that.
Well, I mean, you know, it's the least really you could expect from something like this. But you know what I'm curious about is where did the original idea for the book series come from?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because it's kind of a roundabout way where and how it came about. So I remember years ago, probably, I'd say maybe 8, 9, could be even 10 years ago, maybe even further. I was chatting to a friend of mine, and we were chatting about me and how I was going to build a business and what were the things I needed to do. And she was saying to me that, well, Alan, to be honest with you, to get recognition in Ireland, you really need to either be a doctor or write a book. So I'm not going to put myself down, right? But I'll never be a doctor of anything because I haven't got the patience to study for that long. I absolutely have the intelligence 100%, but I don't have the patience to do it. That's what I'm saying, and nobody can prove me wrong. So anyway, that was in the back of my head for a few years. And then probably, I'd say maybe about 2015, maybe 2016, I went, do you know what? I'm actually going to do it. I'm just going to write a book. So I started writing this big, huge book. It was like My Lord of the Rings. So it was about 10 pages long.
And I was literally just thinking Lord of the Rings for some reason, an epic.
There you go. And I knew Maria beforehand, and I contacted Maria and I said, Maria, I'm writing a book. And I've never written anything. I've never gone to learn about how to write a book, anything like that. Would you be interested in editing it? And she went, absolutely, Alan. I absolutely would. So I went, great.
He's up to the
So
challenge.
set up a Google Drive and sent her over this. I think it was at about, I don't know, 50 or 60,000 pages words. So it was it was a grand sized book. And I'd broken it up into sections, and I had all the different elements of parenting. I thought, yeah, this is this and this. And Maria came back to me, and she was extremely gentle and caring in her response. And she said something along the lines of, Alan, I see what you're trying to say. You write with a stream of consciousness, right? And I was like, that's exactly what I do. And she said, when I'm reading it, I can just hear you. But
oh, here we go.
People don't read in stream of consciousness. And I went, that's why I need you. So anyway, we were back and forth. And then I kind of went, right, well, I want to do a series instead of doing this just one big book. So I was thinking, how many parents actually have the opportunity to sit down and read a 50, 60,000 word book? Not many. And I thought, well, what would make it much more accessible is if we broke it up and put it in bite-sized chunks that they could. What I thought at the time was, I went, so that they could nearly have the book in their pocket. And then I went, that's the name of the series, Parenting in My Pocket.
That's brilliant. So
the series actually came first before the book. So anyway, started working on the communication book, hint, hint, book 3. And then I was kind of getting stunted, and I was getting busier with work. So, my private practice was taking off, and I had changes in working in the youth project and stuff like that. So I was really struggling to get the time to actually sit down and write. And a few years ago, I changed. So I used to kind of write till, 12:30, 1 o'clock at night, having worked all day. And I think when I turned 40, I kind of went, what the hell am I doing? I'm too old for this. I need sleep. So I kind of went, right, I have to knock this on the head because it's not good. I wasn't feeling good. I was tired a lot. And so I'm a big fan of a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk.
Okay.
And he talks a lot about when you create content. So I do the Facebook Lives every week. He said, when you do content, it doesn't just have to be that one-off thing. You can chop that up and put that into lots of different Instagram posts, and you can do this, that. And he did it. He took a Q&A series that he did on podcast and put it into book form. And I went,
wow,
that's so easily done.
Yeah.
So thankfully I have an exceptionally good administrative better half.
Yeah.
So she took on to type up. So she had to listen to every single Q&A I've done and type it up. I know. God love her. Yeah. So that's where the inspiration for the Q&A. So we got the Q&A done. And then I was thinking, right, well, I'll bring out communication book as number 2. And she kind of went, well, I've got the second book finished, as in I've typed up this enough Q&As for a second book. Yeah. And I was like, great, that takes the pressure off me from having to finish book 3. So that's where it came about. And I have a vision of somebody's bookshelf, and it may be just my mom and dad's who are sitting there, but a bookshelf with lots, a number of different books that people can just go to, pull out. Yeah. And just, if there is a particular issue going on at home, they can flip through it and go, okay, well, this is actually something that can actually help me right now. And I don't have to read reams and reams and pages to try and find that one piece of information that might be helpful, I'm able to do the I'm able to grab what it is I need and be gone.
Yeah, that's
so there you go.
I mean, that's fantastic, man. I mean, well, I suppose you've touched on you've really, you know, touched on the writing aspect of that. So I suppose, you know, coming from where you've come from, not being a writer traditionally, was it an easy process? You know, if you could expand a bit more on that, was it an easy process to write and then actually to get the book out there itself?
I was very lucky with Maria. So she guided me through the whole process of writing. She guided me through the whole process of self-publishing and getting stuff out there. She was able to tell me what websites I needed to sign up in order to get books into the US shops, and you know, not just Amazon, and little simple things like, you know, if you change the price with Barnes and Noble or Waterstones, Amazon will just go whoosh. So Amazon cannot be cannot be more expensive than others, so they need to be the cheapest. So just, you know, simple little things like that you'd never think about. But I enjoyed the writing process when I started it. I don't enjoy the editing process.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a lot of head work.
Yeah, and there are, like, I couldn't do Maria's job, and I have friends who edit documents and stuff like that for their work, and I just, it does not work for me. I like to do something, give it to somebody, let them fix it, and then I'll put my stamp of approval on it, and then
that makes perfect sense. You know, but that's the strength in the knowing, isn't there? The strength in the knowing that's, you know, where your strengths are, you know, and you know where your limitations are as well, and the strength in that too. You know, that's fantastic.
It's funny actually you say that, because I think probably 2 or 3 years ago I was up in my parents' house, and I think I was given an ultimatum: get some of your shit out of the house. Oh, look, I can see my mum stared at my dad there going, I never said that. She wouldn't have put it in such a coarse way, but it might have been, there's some of your boxes here, love. Do you want to take them home with you?
Angel.
And but what it was my, actually, I've just realized I think they're still up in the house. Some of my essays from university, and I picked up my dissertation, and my dissertation was on psychological profiling of serial killers. So I was fascinated at the time, and I read through it, and like, it literally is a stream of consciousness. I don't know how I passed it, because it was just a stream of consciousness writing.
A way that you create. It's just,
if I'm going to be honest, Darryn, I'm just not a writer. Like, I'm just not built to write.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I'll keep writing. But it's just, my skills are best served elsewhere. That's what.
Well, I suppose the thing though is, you see, maybe you can relate in a way in terms of how you're coming across with your books. You can relate by not coming at it as a writer. There's a certain, there will be a certain way that you're communicating what you're you know, doing in a very grounded way. Do you know what I mean? I'm a singing teacher, but I wasn't taught as to be a singing teacher. I'm teaching as the way I would like to be taught. I go into a lesson. What is it I want? And that's how I approach it. And maybe how you're putting your words across is not coming from a writer's way. So therefore, people will maybe connect with it on a more grounded level. More, this guy gets where I'm coming from. He's speaking like me because he's a parent.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because Dr. Mary O'Kane, who a lot of people in Ireland would know, is, you know, very highly respected in terms of parenting, and she wrote a little note about the book for the book, and that's exactly what she said. She said it's just the down to earth style
Yeah.
allows parents to relate to it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe I am a writer, Darren. Jesus,
Well, I mean,
revelation here.
I always remember one of my favorite films, or one film I loved, Throw Mama from the Train.
Never
Great.
seen it.
Yeah.
Sylvester
Oh, you've never
Stallone.
seen it? Oh,
Yeah.
you've got to see it. Brilliant. Well, there's a quote in there, and oh, stuck with me. A writer writes. So, if writer writes, so you're a writer. If you're writing something, you're writing, and you're a writer. Do you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, it was one day I was a singing teacher, but there was one day I wasn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like anything really. I think you can have an idea of what these people what a writer is. There's always these ideas, isn't there? And suddenly you find, oh, hang on, I'm writing books here. I'm a writer now. Do you know? And that's another string to your bow. But I tell you what I'm really interested in is I'd love to know a bit more about your background, and how you ended up parenting, how you ended up in the parenting arena, shall I say?
Well, I won't get into the nitty gritty, but when a mommy and a daddy get together,
you picked up on my little fluff there.
They have a baby.
How did you get into parenting? Well, the birds and the bees. Let me think.
Yeah, I'll take it away from in that direction. I'll take it more of a PG direction. But so I studied applied social science in college, and it was psychology, sociology, and criminology, and I absolutely adored criminology, adored it. And I was looking to get onto a course, a criminology course, a master's course in Liverpool, and I applied too late, and I didn't get into the course. So I was coming back to Ireland just because my time in England was finished. So and my dad's aunt knew somebody who ran a youth hostel for kids who were on probation or coming out of prison. And she asked him, "You've got any jobs going?" He said, "Yeah, we'll take relief work." So I was looking for a job, came home, got the relief work, got all the crappy shifts. But what it started to spark in me was an interest in understanding behind the behavior that people see. So the people I was working with were very much, they were drug addicts. They'd done burglaries, they had stabbings, assaults. So they were all people who had done enough crime at a young age that they were in prison, and then they were coming out. So that was a massive learning curve for me in terms of figuring out that these people are people, and there are things that have influenced them to get them to that point. So that got me interested in understanding the family dynamics. And once you delved into the family dynamics, so I used to get, as I said, the terrible shift. So I would be, the 11 in the morning, or the 11 at night, sorry, till 12 the next day. And thankfully not every night was crazy where I was dealing with a house full of lads going nuts. So I'd get to sit down and just read through the files to try and understand the young people better. And when you'd see the background some of them had come from, that got me thinking about, well, it's all well and good us working with them now when they've gone through that, but wouldn't it be very, very more effective to actually start to work with the family I've one very sad situation where there was a young lad who came out. He got clean in prison. He was a heroin addict at 16. He got out of prison. He'd come, and the policy at the time, now we're talking 20 years ago, the policy at the time in the place was you went home every second weekend. So he was coming up for his first weekend home, and he said, "Can I stay?" And he was told, "No, you can't stay." And he said, "Please, can I stay?" And I was like, "Well, I'll see if we can wrangle it," because I was working that weekend, and he was a lovely, lovely, lovely guy. And the policy was you had to go home. And he said, "Please, can I stay? Because my family are all heroin addicts, and I don't feel strong enough that if I go home, I won't be able to stop myself from getting back into it. And he pleaded with a social worker, he pleaded with the manager of the place, and said, sorry, it's the policy. And you can imagine what happened. He went home, and a friend of mine who was a guard, he subsequently said to me, because he did a work experience or a placement with us, and so he met the guy and he got to know him, and he said he was dead by 19. And that started me thinking about, here we have a young person whose situation is being completely taken out of his hands. And that's, in some ways, that's the reality for a lot of children. Like, a lot of children just don't have the option. My kids, they're very restricted in what they can do, because I'm the parent and I decide, or we decide, what they can or can't do within reason. So that started an interest in understanding. And then I got into studying psychotherapy and counseling, and trying to understand human beings a bit better. And then I got into life coaching, which I absolutely loved. And I had moved jobs, and I'd worked with kids who'd been abused. I'd worked with kids who would have learning difficulties. And I was seeing that, again, if you could impact with the parents, you could change the situation at home without just changing the time with the kid in that moment. And then, I suppose, myself and my dad set up CA coaching in 2009. So we thought, let's give it a go. He was a life coach as well, and we started. And at the time, I was running a youth project for kids who were in trouble with the law. And we would recommend that all these parenting courses that people would go on to. So they'd go to the parenting courses and they'd come back and they'd go, that was really good, really interesting. Still don't know what to do different. I was going, what? And when I got the content of the programs, they were all very fluffy. Have empathy for your child. Tell them you love them. And you're kind of going, but here's a mum who's a single parent, and her son is trying to steal every single penny she has. Telling him she loves him isn't going to stop it. So myself and my dad sat down and we devised a parenting course that was very practical based on the coaching and therapy backgrounds that we had, and we took the practical elements of that that people could actually take away and use. So that's where that started. And then we started to run them, and they got popular, and we would get called back to places to run them every year. And I continued my studies. And then in 2017, I think, I was approached so I'd started to do radio, do a bit of TV. So I was starting to get, people were starting to recognize me or notice that I was in the arena, and that, I was getting some positive talk about me. So a lady approached me who had set up a company called Help Me to Parent. And she said, Alan, I need to get out of this. And I don't want to just close it down, because there is a huge amount of resources on the website and the programs and stuff like that. So would you be interested in taking it over? So myself and my mum sat down and said, will we take over this business? And we went, well, let's give it a try. And we took it over, and we have just gone from strength to strength. And Help Me to Parent is one of the main parenting organizations in the country now.
That's amazing. What a start.
Long-winded.
Well, no, I mean, I'm I'm amazed at how how far a journey you've gone, and how colorful it is, and what you've always struck me as a kind of person that I connect with you in a lot of ways, I identify with you in a lot of ways, with a sense that you seem to draw, like the whole thing that you're saying, you're not a writer, but you're writing. You draw from a lot of different things, and you're bringing it all in to do what it is that you're doing now. And I bet you back in the day, you know, got in your DeLorean and went back to, you know, when you're doing your training at the time, or you're studying and at college, that, oh, this is what you'll be doing now. I bet you would have been, and you'll be writing books, and you'll be doing you know, this here. We've got people on here, and they're all like, you know, talk to me. I want to know more about this guy, and you know, and it's, you would have been just bemused, but it's a fascinating story. Well, it's your life, isn't it?
Yeah, and like it's funny, like I've said to you before, you know, doing the motivation interviews and stuff like that. I love doing it because I love listening to people's story. I don't really think about myself, my own story, but there's lots of stuff there that, you know, we could dig into, but that's for maybe that's for a counseling session. I don't know.
Well, you know, I'm you know, I mean, as I'm kind of doing this, you know, these things are popping into my head all the time. But I suppose from my perspective and from people who are online now, one thing I'd be curious about is what your hopes are. What are you hoping that your readers are going to get from the book? I mean, maybe it sounds like a silly question, but I think it's I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, I suppose basically what I'm hoping is that it will translate how I work. So I want people to have practical things that they can do. So if anyone comes and works with me, I want them to start to feel like they can get more control. Because if someone's coming to talk to me, they may feel like things are not in control. They're not in control of their situation. So what I would hope is that I can give them practical tools that they can use to start to change that for themselves, so that they can actually start to take back that control that they need. And, you know, especially when we're talking about parenting, I always have to preface kind of using the word control. We're not talking about controlling children. What we're talking about is taking back the reins of the household, because sometimes parents can feel that the children are driving the car. And that could be quite a challenging place to be in. So it's about trying to give parents the practical skills to be able to bring back those reins as best as they can. And that's what I hope from the book, or any of the books, is that people can find practical elements from it that they can, and even if it's only one thing that they can go, right, I can knit this into the fabric of my household. Because there's no point in anyone coming along and doing a parenting course and going, right, that's it. I'm going home and we're turning this house upside down, and there's going to be 500 new rules for the kids, and there's going to be 200 new rules for my partner, and there's, you know, it's just not going to work. So with anything, it's about breaking it down to just one at a time. Just give it one, try one thing at a time, so that it gives you the better chance of it becoming a regular routine, as opposed to the crash diet, because crash diets just never work. So why would we do that with parenting? And you have the time. Because a lot of parents, when they're under stress, can feel like, we have to sort this out. And then what happens is our head goes into the future, because if they're like this when they're 16 or 17, we've no hope. And they're 6. And there's a lot to happen between 6 and 16. And your child's going to change a lot between 6 and 16. So you have time to make those changes. And sometimes only the smallest change is what's needed.
Well, I think you tapped into something there again. That again, I would totally identify with this. And from my perspective, as a vocal coach, and it's that thing that you just, exactly the same thing. Just it can be often just one thing. Don't take on a pile of things. Just focus on one thing and draw from that, and use that if you can connect with that one thing. And I think as a from a parent's perspective, there's a sense of being overwhelmed by a million different things coming at you from all different directions, emotions going up and down and up and down. And oh my God, I just have all these different bits of advice going through my head. But if you can just latch onto that one and take that and try and run with that, the sense of achievement in that in itself, you know, and is a realistic sense as well. You know, you're not bombarding yourself like the crash diet thing. It's just often just one little change can make such a big difference, you know.
Absolutely.
So you've already touched on this already, but I'd love, you know, I'd be interested to know if you could expand on it a bit more. Speaking of expanding, are you thinking of expanding the series? I know you've touched on it already, but
yeah,
know a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, like I said, volume 1 and 2 are based around the Q&As that I do every week on Facebook. But book 3, and hopefully Maria hasn't jumped off yet, or jumped off a cliff maybe. Book 3 is going to be on communication. So again, it's practical things that I've used over the years to try and improve my own communication, but working with people as well to give them the practical skills. So that's, and it's probably going to be a bit more concise, but
okay.
Essentially they're ones that are just people can jump into and go, okay, well, let's try this, or let's try this, but with a view to try and explain why this is. So in order for us to communicate more effectively, we have to understand how we communicate ourselves and how to communicate with the people that we are with. So I'm a certain way, and my wife is different, and my eldest child is different, and my youngest child is different. And we all need to communicate in different ways with different people. I'm sure everybody sitting here listening is going, yeah, I definitely communicate differently with different people depending on the situation or what's going on. So once we start to look at how I do what I do, then I can become more effective in looking at how I can positively communicate with you what I need you to do. So instead of going, just put your shoes on, we have to get out the door. Well, if I know that every single morning I'm getting shouting at my child to put their shoes on, well, what's happening for me? Okay, maybe I'm getting up too late. Maybe the whole morning process is just, it's too rushed, so that I'm feeling rushed. So therefore I'm not grounded, and I'm kind of working from in transactional analysis, what we call as the negative triangle. And all of a sudden I start giving out and they start crying, which then amplifies the whole situation. Whereas if I go, well, okay, in order for me to communicate better and stay calmer, maybe I need to get up a bit earlier so that everything is in place. The shoes are on first before we even get the breakfast done. And it's amazing how effective that can be.
It's just that little adjustment.
That's it. But that's it, Darren. Any of the people I've worked with over the years who've been successful, it is usually the tiniest little adjustments to the routine at home or the situation that have the biggest impact.
Well, again, what we were just saying there a minute ago, you know, it's just that small adjustment of that one thing can have such it's like the butterfly effect, you know, it can just have such a big impact. People, I think it's kind of parents realizing that it's in doing that, they're taking the power back, you know, and not maybe taking the power back, but they're
taking the reins.
They're taking the reins. Exactly. They've it's that small slight adjustment, you know.
So that's the next book. So I've a little bit more to write on that. I think anyway, Maria might tell me something very different, but I think I've only got a little bit more to write on that, and then that will be ready to rock and roll. So that will be the next book. I'm writing another book with, now it's not going to be part of the Parenting with Pocket series, with a lady called Miriam Nordman. She is a French lady who lives in Italy, and we are both logo synthesis practitioners. So I won't get into logo synthesis and all that kind of stuff, but we are writing a book essentially on for teenagers on how to try and manage their own anxiety levels. So I can't wait to get this book written. I really can't. So it's going to be very much practical based, where they're doing things, you know what I mean? It's almost like going to be a workbook rather than a book. So that's, Miriam has started working on that. Well, we both started, but she's kind of moved on because I had to get this one sorted and finished. So we're hoping to have that book out next year as well. But we'll see how it goes. So that's the plan. But then, you know, the Q&A will probably be number 3. I'm sure will be ready to go as well.
That's
So
amazing.
why not?
Yeah, I mean, geez, you certainly have a lot going on. I mean, but it's great the way you've done the series. Again, it's very accessible. I think that's the thing for me that keeps on coming up. It's very grounded and very accessible, you know, and you're writing it from the point of view, you know, being a parent yourself as well. And again, touching back on being a writer I don't think it necessarily, I just think it takes away, it takes away a lot of the stuff that maybe a lot of people can't really connect with, or they find it hard to connect with. I myself, you know, when I'm buying books, and you can kind of tell the difference between somebody who's been educated in this, or who has been educated and actually is this themselves, you know, and certainly you'll be writing it from the point of view of being a parent yourself. So you can connect, you can identify, it's not just stuff you've learned about, you know.
And being a teenager, Darren, because I'm still so close to being a teenager.
Oh yeah. Well, I was going to say, well, you know, I'm 42, but emotionally, that's debatable. You know, maybe I'm almost hit about 12, maybe 13.
You're getting there. You're getting there.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Waiting for the old voice to break. So listen, speaking of Maria, it'd be great if we could bring in book editor Maria Fowler, and just see how she found the whole process of working with you. So let's bring in Maria.
Hi, I'm right here.
Maria, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. It's great to have you on board. It's brilliant. Well, what I'd love to ask is, was it an easy task to take on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's what I do. So, you know, I didn't look at it and go, oh no, you know, it was fun. I always enjoy working with Alan. He really needs to be nicer to himself about the whole process. It was great. We have a good relationship with this, and the communication between us was fine. It was good. It was always a good project. And I was glad that, because the communication book is a bit of a different beast than these, that is going to take a little bit longer, that we had these to work on in between, or as we were doing that one. So this was it was a good fit for the timing that we had. And I like them, the books themselves anyway, because they are accessible and they're conversational in a way that I think is easier for people to digest. So Alan complaining about not being a writer in this case is a good thing. And it's not that he isn't a writer, it's that he has a different approach that I think is better in this case than sitting down and banging out a book that is more academic. So I think it's a strength more than a weakness.
Yeah, well, I completely, for me personally, I would probably, if from my perspective, I would see that, just like you were saying, as a bonus, as a good thing, because we can get lost in people can get lost maybe in jargon or whatever, you know. And I totally get that. For me, that's an absolute bonus. So I suppose what I'm really intrigued about is to know what were some of the challenges you faced in the process.
Really, it was finding time between both of our schedules. It was a crazy couple of years for both of us. So getting the opportunity to sit down and finish things was challenging, but the work itself was not challenging. I just needed about 13 more hours in my day. And I think he did too. The other part for me from an editorial standpoint was not Americanizing things, you know, because I wanted to, you know, Alan's not American, so I'm not going to change the spelling of things, and, you know, not going to change the colloquialisms or anything like that, where, you know, I thought it was important to keep his voice in this, and that meant leaving things as they were, which if it were a different kind of book might get edited out. So so as an automatic sort of, I need to change the spelling of behavior, I don't really need to change the spelling of behavior. So, you know, it was just sort of catching myself as I was doing that kind of work. But it really was, it was a fun job. It's always been a fun job.
That's fantastic. It's great to hear. So well then with that, were there any kind of standout, was there any kind of standout parts in the editing process for you? Kind of jumps
Just
out?
getting it done. I think getting it done was kind of a big thing. No, because this one was the second volume, a lot of it we had already done the first volume, and that was sort of the template for moving forward. So in that sense, it was pretty easy. And for me, because I read it a lot of times, I probably read the book, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5, 6 times all the way through. Luckily, the information isn't terrible, and it wasn't hardship to read things 4 or 5 times, because I have had some books under my belt that really not fun to read over and over again. So that was helpful, that it was all good information. And, you know, I didn't go, oh geez, there goes Alan again. You know, there wasn't anything like that.
Well, that's it's when you've essentially answered my next question, which is you know, I suppose I'd be interested in hearing a bit more about that. Being an editor yourself, I suppose what comes to mind is do you actually take on board what you're reading?
Well, I'm lucky enough that I worked with Alan previously to doing any of this, and doing parenting work. I needed some help out of a spot with my kids at the time. And I have to say, my kids are a success story, mostly because of Alan. So they're really good kids, and he really helped me out. So I had already had a pretty good idea of how he approached parenting work. So for me, reading it was just sort of confirmation of what I had learned, and that not that he you know, I can't say things changed, but he's also not static in what he does. I mean, he moves along with the time. So, you know, when my kids were younger, it wasn't really such a big deal about phones and that kind of thing, where now that's a bigger thing than it was at the time. But for me, the thing that I always got out of his work was, you know, about setting realistic boundaries and consequences. And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of parents, is what consequence do I put for, you know, some issue that comes up? And I know that was difficult for me. So in reading this stuff, even though my kids are older now and I don't have the same needs as I did before, I still think that information is universal. You know, it's about setting boundaries for yourself, regardless of kids or not. And I think that part of it sort of transcends parenting. So it was a good reminder for me as I was going through and thinking, yeah, I really need to shore up my boundaries a little bit more, and that kind of thing. So I always take something in. I mean, it's all good information, and Alan gives very good advice. So it was nice to have that reminder as I went through.
It must make your job that much more interesting when you've got something that you're working on that you're actually interested in.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, for me, that kind of goes without saying, really.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Maria, thank you so much for chatting with us. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.
Really lovely to just get your insight, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a million. Cheers. Thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maria. You were very kind to me there.
Well, do you know, I think what I'm curious about, I suppose with I'm not a parent myself. I'm not a parent myself, but I've seen so many of my friends sort of just being parents, you know, and it's something I'd love to be one day. I very much hope we can be a parent one day. But I suppose what I've always seen, and I've always been curious about with the work that I do, which is obviously a vocal coach, but I work with building confidence, and I work with certain areas which I can maybe identify with certain things that you've been bringing up today. But what I mostly see is how much parents beat themselves up constantly, over and over and over. And what can I do better? What am I doing wrong? Surely there's something I'm doing wrong. And I've seen this with a lot of my friends who pain over trying to parent better, or trying to be better parents, or model parents, or and they're always trying to do the same thing. But I suppose what I would be curious about your books, is there kind of, again, you've kind of already touched on this, but is there, would I get something from that? Would I, if I was going into your books, for me personally, the kind of person I am, the kind of person my wife is, we would be the same kind of thing. We would always be trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? Is there something I'm doing wrong? And how do I deal with that? Essentially, if I pick up your books, will I get something from that? Will I learn how to navigate that one?
Yeah. Well, I hope so, because one of the big things I try to get across is that we all do the best that we can at any given time with the knowledge and information that we have and the conditions that we are in. And what I mean by that is that so many of the people I work with will look back and go, oh, I should have done this, or why did I do that, or I wish I hadn't done this.
Yeah.
But at that moment, that was the best that you could operate.
Yeah.
Because what we do is we see it through a very kind of slim lens of, this incident happened and this is how I reacted, and I am really upset or devastated with how I reacted. Whereas you mightn't have slept well for 2 or 3 nights. The kids might have been arguing all day. The school might have rung you and said, we think your child's got COVID. You may be worrying about the bills. You may be living with a partner and you don't like each other particularly well.
Yeah.
So there's all these conditions that can set things up to put you in a position where you will lose it with the kids, or you will, overreact or not react in a way that you want. So what I try to do with the books, and definitely with the communication book, what I'm hoping is that people will be able to reflect on how I do what I do, and then go, well, let's try and change one thing. And the other thing I'd suggest is get some sessions with a parent coach, just if you need it, but because it's really effective. So but it definitely, people would, I try to get people to take the pressure off themselves, because you're doing the best you can, unless you're consciously on purpose trying to harm your children, which most parents don't, but so we put pressure on ourselves to be, everything we can, and also step off the social media if you're finding that you're looking at and seeing yourself in a negative light as a parent. So look, there's, Johnny and Jane, and look, their 3 kids are all very happy, and here you are pulling the heads off each other. But we don't take into account that probably 5 minutes before that photograph was taken, Johnny and Jane were killing the kids and going, we want to get one bloody photograph. Just one.
So Insta Life has a lot to answer for.
Well, actually, it doesn't. Our interpretation of it, because if we blame the other thing, then we're not actually in control of it. Whereas, so if I turn around and go, well, I can change how I view the Instagram posts, well, then it doesn't actually matter what anybody else does, because I'm in control of myself.
Wow. I know what you mean. Yeah, God, you've you know what? That tends to be a phrase that I use. That has an awful lot to answer for. But actually, it's how I perceive it. It's. I know what you mean, and that I can change how I see it and change how I view it, and be a bit more realistic. That yes, just like you say, actually, they could have been. Chances are they could have been just killing each other minutes beforehand, or even just trying to achieve the photograph. Like, get it here, try back it. So it's that thing. I know what you mean. Fantastic. Yeah, that's it's again, but it's what you're saying there doesn't sound like hoity-toity up here kind of stuff. It sounds like stuff, spoken from a parent themselves,
Yeah, a lot of the books I've read over the years have very much kind of,
Yeah.
You're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
You're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
what I hope people to get from my books is that you're doing it as well as you can, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's I hear you, man. I hear you loud and clear. And the same can be said for any aspect of your life, really.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I think that's what's so wonderful about how your approach is. It can apply to many different things. As I'm sitting here, we're just chatting, and as I know you outside of this, there are just it is, and this is, you know, I haven't been paid to say this, by the way, or anything, but as I know you in outside of this, this is what you are like. This is who you are as a person, you know. And I just, you know, I think this is why people gravitate towards you so much in terms of what you do, and in terms of, you know, identifying with you and listening to what you're saying and taking it, because it is very down to earth. It's very grounded in reality. And there's a lot to be said for you in that, Alan, you know. So I think you're doing amazing things, man. I'm still waiting for the Revolut payment to come through.
Oh yeah.
Oh, denied, declined. Oh, jeez. Anyway, listen, enough of my bad comedy. Look, Alan, thanks a million for chatting with us. It's your time is very much valued, and by all the great comments here by everybody, you've you know, you've really left an impact, you know, and on me, and it's absolutely, it's always a pleasure chatting with you, but you know, we really appreciate your time. But also I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's joined us at the official launch of Alan's new book, Parenting in My Pocket, Parenting Volume 2. And it's just been absolutely such a pleasure. You can get it on Amazon, or pick up a signed copy as well from the Help Me to Parent site. That's Help Me to Parent site. And just thanks a million for everyone for sticking on and listening to some of my very questionable humor. And but Alan, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. It really has. It really has.
Darryn, I have to take this moment and say thank you. I was thinking about who could I ask to come and be the host. There was a few names that were jumping around, and then your name jumped into my head, and I went, he's the only man to do it. And I approached Darryn, and he said, absolutely, I'll do it. And it has been fantastic. This has been what I'd hoped. Actually, probably more than I'd hoped. So I appreciate you stepping in and doing the hosting duties. I'd like to thank the lovely Maria Fowler. Maria, I would be absolutely lost without you. And guys, thank you so much for everybody who came and sat here for an hour and listened to me and Darryn rabbit on. It's funny, like I say to people sometimes, when I do Facebook Lives or I put out a book, I never think about somebody actually listening or actually wanting to read or buy any of them. So it's just to have, you know, we've had over 30 people come in tonight to spend an hour of their evening with us, and it's quite humbling. So I really appreciate everybody coming, and for all the support as well, because, you know, you guys keep this train going. You guys tune in every week, and without you, I'd be lost. So I'm going to get emotional now.
Well, I'm getting emotional just listening to you here, man. Jesus.
Listen to me shouting on. No, guys, thank you to everybody for tuning in, and I hope you all enjoy your POAP NFT. And if you, I think, I'm not sure, Maria, but I think we need to get a couple of million copy sales to hit New York Times bestseller. So if you could all go out and buy like a couple of 100,000 copies each, that'd be fantastic. I'd really appreciate it.
Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas is coming. Give one to everybody.
100,000 copies in your stocking, you know. Easy.
It'd be fine. But thank you to everybody. I really appreciate it.
Well, fair play to you guys.
Right. I'll let you all go back to your evening, your day, your morning, wherever you are. And Darryn, thanks again.
It's a pleasure. Everybody's been saying such lovely things, and look, it's been wonderful. It's been really wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alan. This has been great. This has been better, and I didn't get sick all over the place with nerves, so that's great.
You did a good job.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Take care.
So much.
Thank you so much, guys. All the best.
Bye.
Thank you, Alan.